Ray, good to have you, bro.
My bro,
It's
man the man.
this is pretty wild, like because it's episode one, like of this thing that really like we've been talking about for years, like
For a long time.
different things, and you're probably one of the very few people that like I've actually shared like glimpses of my heart and stuff with.
It's like you
And
throw it out there and go, Ray, please take a little bit of a bite and then
yeah,
I'll reel it back.
what do you think? What do you think? Uh, and then you'd give me encouragement, and then I'd run scared, and then,
Yeah.
and
Then I
then
give you another encouragement. You're like, oh,
but I'm so yeah, well, yeah, but so I'm excited because like for me, this project, you know, I'll share a little bit about the heart of it. Is from that story in Luke 24 where
yeah,
Jesus is walking with the disciples and he hides his identity from them. And for me, like, I feel like it's such a strong metaphor for so many people's journeys that God's walking with them, the Holy Spirit's sort of working in their hearts and talking to them, and they don't even know it.
yeah.
But they don't know what's going on until finally they realize God's been leading them on this journey. And
So powerful.
and so I just wanted to, yeah, hear about people's stories and people's journeys and sort of give some tools and strategies to maybe help them on that journey.
Yeah. And hopefully one day we get to hear yours because yours isn't it? I mean, I guess our stories sort of interconnect in some way.
Well, that's one of the cool things that I want to talk
Yeah.
about with you is, and like I'll share a funny anecdote. Like, and I didn't tell you what it was going to be, but I told you I had a funny story.
Now I'm nervous.
Hey, nah, it's sort of more reflective on me than you.
Oh, I thought it was going to be our Middle Eastern story when
Um,
when you and I were roommates for 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. Those stories are locked in a safe forever.
Locked in Egypt, forever
Locked
to
in
be
Egypt.
forgotten.
But like we've known each other for nearly 20 years now,
Yeah.
and
Really? 20 years?
dude, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like
That's
it would have been like 2003
Yep.
we first met. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, 16 years anyway.
Wow.
Like yeah, it's nuts really to think about. Like it's someone's like whole school journey. Like we've known each other for that long, and I remember saying to Jack, like when we were at college, I feel like our relationship is kind of like, do you remember that TV show Scrubs?
Yes.
And I feel like I'm JD and you're Kirk. So like, you know,
That's so cool.
I'm this real nerdy, like socially awkward white guy, and you're like the real cool, like socially gifted,
Yeah.
brown skinned friend.
Yeah.
that sort of, if it wasn't for you, like my social interactions would have been like really poor. And like I think I've only ever shared that with Jack, and she just cracked up.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. But at the
But
same time, I wish I was smart as Dan. Damn it.
but like, so that's like a funny, I think a real funny metaphor for
Oh, that's so cool. I love
even
that.
though like such different backgrounds and different things, like we've always had this connection.
Yeah.
And I think like with that, our connection, like our stories really kind of run parallel to each other in a lot of ways. So like you have come from like an immigrant family.
Yeah.
I'm from an immigrant family as well.
Yeah.
And you know, we both grew up in the church in different sort of ways. You grew up with an Adventist background. I grew up with a Baptist background.
Yeah.
But we both actually really had a conversion experience at the same time,
Yeah.
at the same event.
That is nuts.
And it's sort of, you know, like different because you grew up in like Logan.
Yeah.
I grew up in country New South Wales.
Outside.
And, you know, to then sort of to have like these parallel sort of experiences, and we both have this conversion experience, and we both end up going to study ministry and doing different things. Like it's pretty crazy. All right. Do you want to share like a little bit about like what that sort of time was like?
Yeah. So look, I think what most people don't know, like you said, we're like you and I have a friendship for like 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And so when I met you, it was at a camp. It was at a church camp. I think one of the youth groups that your wife now, Jack, attended, and it was that particular
Yeah.
youth group. I still
Yeah.
remember it was at Telebudger Camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I
We
was
were both
invited
kind of
just to,
outsiders.
the south side. So I was just asked to attend. So I thought, oh yeah, I literally didn't know anyone, maybe a few people,
Yeah.
but I wasn't necessarily close with them, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear that screaming. That's my kids. But anyway,
Yeah.
they're surviving.
We'll get to them later.
Yeah. And so I remember going to the camp and I checked into my room and I just sat there. I was like, well, I guess I'll go find people. And then I think you walked into the room and were like, hey. And then I just assumed that you were part of the main youth group.
Yeah.
And then we just started chatting. And then one thing led to another. Then we both realized that we were both sort of similar in the sense that we knew some of the people there, but we didn't quite fit in. We didn't quite click into the main group, but we were happy to be there. Obviously, you were there supporting Jack, who was your girlfriend at the time. And I was just there because I was like, hey, it's just another youth event. Yeah. So then by the end of that weekend, you and I just bonded because we were like, almost felt like we're these outsiders trying to fit into these people. But then we had similar, I guess spiritual conversion background.
Places in our
yeah. The things, the places, you travel. That's when I found out about Africa. You had just come back from Africa.
Literally just came back.
You literally came back from Africa. I said I had a desire to travel. Talked about sport. You talked about soccer. I talked about, I think, basketball and volleyball. I know volleyball. That was at the time when it's a whole nother story, another episode of my conversion from, playing professional sport to really repurposing it in a different way.
Yeah.
But I think from there, bro, we really hit it off.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, man, Dan's a really cool dude. Like, he's similar to me in many ways. Like, we just appreciate genuine relationships. We're not really about the clicks.
Yeah.
You just want to go, hey, I just want to get to know, you're a kind of cool guy. And then we fast forward to the big camp where I guess a mutual pastor of ours,
it's kind of a rewind because that was like,
was that
12,
after?
It was like 12 months before that.
Dude, I didn't even know that, man. Okay, so 12 months before, So by the time we get to that camp, that's right. And I always remember, I don't know if you remember me telling you this, but when I saw you, because I think you were hosting
I think I did one thing.
You did one thing, and I remember saying to myself, that dude looks like the judge from, I think it was Australian Idol.
Yeah. Jimmy. That was when I was like 20 kilos lighter though.
Yeah. And I literally thought, man, isn't he the guy on TV? And then someone said to me after that, no, he just looks very much like. But I didn't really know you then. But let's talk about that camp, because that was at a point of my life where I literally was 1 foot in the church and 1 foot out of the church. Like, you don't have to go into too much details for those who understand what I mean. Like, I was dabbling in
from like growing up, like you had like this sort of like obligation kind of thing. You were wrestling with that church obligation, but didn't really like feel like you belonged or whatever.
Or I didn't even have a real relationship with Christ. I think that's what it really came down to. But I guess the context to that was, I grew up in a culture, and I'm talking about not a Samoan church culture, and even the culture of what was happening within our church amongst like the young guys, was that there was a cycle, and the cycle was you sort of hung in church until you get old enough to go out clubbing. And then once you hit that age, then you go out, and then, you go out and then you come back to church on a Friday night or even a Saturday for Sabbath school. Rather than talk about Sabbath school, like when I say Sabbath school, like Bible studies, we'll talk about our experiences from the weekend previously.
What we're doing.
So that was literally the cycle that I was in. I was literally in a spin cycle, and I kept on thinking to myself, man, I'd really love to explore and check this out. Like, everyone seems to be doing it. A handful of the older guys were doing it. I guess they seem to be a bit of, not my role models, but I just wanted to explore that because it's something that I really didn't get to explore. So then
it becomes like a culture in and of itself,
it's a culture within a culture,
and there's like a pull within that, right? And I think like what you're sort of describing is like you're sort of present at church, right? So like on the attendance sheet, like you're there, but
I'm physically there.
You're not in church. You're not part of the church, like in the spiritual sense of the word church. Like you just check. It's sort of like work. Like you're checking your time card and rocking in, And that. So how did you then, so then like we sort of fast forward and we got big camp coming up. We got Eddie Hippolyte coming to preach.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you wouldn't have known. Like, this is like, Eddie was super fresh back in the day, then, like, I think it was probably his first time to Australia.
It was. I remember Murray Hunter was in charge of that particular division of camp meeting, and he got him out because Murray Hunter was over in the UK.
Yeah. Random fact, like, Jack was the program coordinator for that big camp. Yeah. So that's my wife, Jack. And
that's how you get the gig. Clever. I see.
Well, like we like, so I don't meet her for like another 12 months or something, really.
Yeah.
Before that, but yeah. So the lead up, why do you go to camp? Like, was there anything in particular? Was it just out of habit? Was there?
Yeah.
Had there been things leading up to that?
Yeah, there was two things. One, it was a habit. It was just something to look forward to. But at that particular time of my life, I was actually invited to be part of the worship team, like the singers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Remember, there was a choir.
Yeah.
And I was in the choir, so I wasn't in the front line. I was actually in the choir because obviously I was known as the guy that sings in school and church and leads my own church choir. So I was still part of leading my own church choir at that time. So that's how I got involved in the camp meeting. And so we had been practicing leading up to it. I was super excited, but at the same time, I had this double standard where it's like I was doing all the church things just to be seen.
Yeah.
A part of me still wanted to believe that what I was doing was a good thing, and that at some point, I don't know, I just wanted to convict myself that it was the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But then there was the other part of me that was like, nah, you don't really want to be here. You actually want to go out. Go party, go clubbing, go drinking, which I was.
Yeah.
You know, that part was just
there's sort of this tension,
full on tension.
Yeah.
So I remember. So this is part of the story that I'll share. Then on a Friday night, some friends and I from church, we decided, hey, as soon as I finish singing on the Friday night, the opening night, right?
Yeah.
Opening night, Eddie, he's preaching a sermon, and obviously we're there. I'm singing in the choir. And we agreed the moment we finish, we're going to drive back together with my friends. I want to go back to this hotel, and then we're going to, have a bit of a party. Then we're just going to go out for the night. So that literally what happened. We finished. I just come back, went with my mates. We partied all night. And then round about, I think maybe 4 o'clock in the morning on our way back, we were dropping people off to their home. I can't even remember. It was a blur.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had a car accident. We ran into the back of this guy who was towing a boat.
Yeah.
And I wasn't driving. That's the thing. I wasn't driving. My mate was. And so we hit the back of the boat. I woke up, startled, like, what's going on? We get out of the car. We assess the damage. We fully just damaged my car. A little bit. I think it was still drivable. Fully just mashed up the back of his boat. So he went, the owner went to jump back in, to go back to his car to grab pen and paper to write down our details. We just decided, let's take off. So we jumped in our car, reversed, and just veered off into some side street. We just took off.
Yeah.
And we're thinking to ourselves, nah, I don't think he saw us. No, we're in the clear. So I got back to the hotel, right? Because I'm thinking I have to go back because it's now Sabbath morning.
Yeah.
And I have to get back to sing. But I'm a bit hungover at the time.
Oh,
so I shower up. I sort of try to come right, and I'm okay to drive. I look at my car. My car is fully just damaged. The front of it's just crunched. Imagine driving into the back of a boat. Like the front is just fully just crushed in like this. And I think to myself, no, I have to drive. And by this stage, I was thinking to myself, all the excuses I needed to make to tell my parents that I'd crashed my car.
Yeah.
So I jump in my car and I'm driving from the south side of Brisbane to where the camp meetings at Watson Park. And remember back in the day, they had the toll booths at the Gateway Bridge.
Oh yeah.
You literally have to stop, throw your little $2 whatever, and the coin goes down the thing. And so I remember pulling up, and the toll person at the particular gate just looked at me, then looked at the car, then looked at me. I'm like, drove off. That was the first part of guilt, right? And I was thinking to myself, oh, surely it's not that bad. I had no idea. I was a bit, still not all there. I get to the camp meeting. Now, if you remember Brisbane camp meeting, they have 100 welcomers, you know, and people directing you where to go. I get to the first gate, same reaction. They're looking at me, they're looking at the car, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, maybe it is a lot worse than I think it is. By the time I actually got to park my car, I'd driven past maybe at least 10 like car attendants or people holding up welcome signs. Every single one of them had the same reaction. Man, by the time I parked my car and I quickly ran to rehearsal, I just knew this is a lot worse than it is. I'm actually in denial, but I'll be all right. So then I'll fast forward even more. I get to rehearsal. I jump off. I just make it in time because everyone's going, where were you? I'm like, oh, sorry, I was just late. I started to sing. And as I was singing, I noticed that people to my left and to my right and in front sort of just turned around and kept looking every now and again at me. And I think to myself, why are they looking at me? Like, have I sung the wrong note? Anyway, the rehearsal finished and I went over to see my friends from church, the good ones.
Yeah.
So as I'm walking towards them from maybe about 2 meters out, they're like, bro, did you shower this morning? I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, you reek like alcohol. And I'm thinking to myself, that was the look that these guys in the choir stands were giving me. Like, this dude doesn't smell right. This dude, he shouldn't even be here. So again, I went quickly, had another shower. I ate as much toothpaste as I possibly could find. And then from that moment onwards, when Eddie would get up to preach, bro, you can believe me, that word that he would share, whatever it was almost like God knew everything I'd done, and it was speaking directly to me, like the words that Eddie was sharing and from scripture, all the stories, all the gems that he was dropping was like God. That whole camp was about him speaking directly to me, and it broke me.
Yeah.
And that was only on a Saturday, and we had a whole week to go.
Yeah. It's so funny, like that sort of this spiritual experience of having like a preacher preaching a message, right?
Yeah.
They've never met you before. They don't know your story. They don't know what's going on in your life. And you having this experience where they're talking about you.
Yeah.
Right. And because like what's funny for me is that you're saying that, and like I had exactly the same experience.
That's crazy.
I don't think I even went. I think maybe the Tuesday night was the first time I went. So I missed that first weekend because I was sort of just started going to church and that sort of thing. And people, my friends from there were inviting me to come and check it out. And I was like, yeah. And I remember first, whatever time it was that it was there, it was just like, I was sitting in that, hundreds of people in this thing. And I was like, there was just this, I'm in like the back corner and it's like, there's this spotlight on me, because he's just, what he's saying, he's just like, oh my goodness, he's talking about my life.
Yeah. Like, how does he know this about me? Who told him my story?
He's talking about me, And to be honest, it was terrifying. Right?
Yeah.
It was there was but it's sort of like this terrifying thing, but like where you can't look away.
Well. You know that you can't look away. Like it's almost like it's a magnetic pull towards the thing that you should be hearing. Yeah. Like you can't escape. It was almost like I was surrendering. Like I was going, okay, whatever I've done, I need to surrender something. Yeah. And I don't know what it is. It feels right that I'm here, but it was crushing me on the inside. Like I was scared, like you were saying. I was embarrassed. I was thinking about all the things I was doing previously to that moment, and the amount of lies I was telling myself and the lies I was telling other people. And man, that was a crushing moment that entire week. Like a good crush in a sense that I actually needed to hear it. I actually needed to face up to the mirror and go, I need to stop messing around. Yeah. So, I mean, look, for me, by the end of the week, I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. I had already made my decision. I'm done. I'm done with living this double standard life. I'm done with trying to chase after my own pleasures and desires and trying to explore all the, because I've already done it. And I always came up empty handed. I always left feeling, empty. Felt like I was chasing my own tail. I was done with trying to impress, people and trying to look the part. And that week was it was a brutal week, but it was a week that saved me. I'm pretty sure it was the same for you too, right?
Oh, dude. Yeah, definitely. Like for me, that was like my like conversion experience, you know, even though like I'd grown up hearing about God and that sort of thing. Like I definitely wasn't someone that believed in Jesus, you know, in the sense of,
yeah,
like I believed he existed and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there's this belief that I didn't believe that he was God.
yeah,
Like that he, and that he
yeah,
was, that he had died for me and that he,
yeah.
and
Or even the thought of like that I was worthy enough, like that I was good enough, like, because everything that I was hearing, I was like, nah, that I'm not even good enough. Like, if there was a standard of even getting to know him, like to know, just sorry, that's my message is going off crazy. If there was even a standard or an entry, you know, test, I would fail it miserably, and not the basic entry of like, you know, surrender. I was just so devastated, but like I said, the point of difference for me was, it was that switch, like you said, that's that true conversion, that switch, that light bulb moment went off in my head. I was like, oh, okay, this is it. Like, this is where it changes. This is where everything changes.
So like, you know, there's so much like, I just share like that there was that sort of final kind of, so I ended up coming like the rest of the week, and then the Friday night, you know, like there's that sort of typical time where the preacher will do like a call for people to make a commitment kind of thing. And I remember like there's probably like 100 people or whatever.
Oh yeah, there was heaps of us that went up.
Like, it was just such an anointed kind of time.
Yeah.
But like I remember going up, or before going up, I remember sitting in my chair, like next to a couple of guys that I'd been going to church with, and you know, there's like this contradicting feelings inside of me. Like I really want to go up, but I really don't want to go up. Like I really,
like, I'm stuck to my seat. I'm glued to my seat.
And finally, like, no, got to, like I just had this feeling like I just had to do it. And so went up, and like they had the prayer. And I remember like I didn't stop and talk to anybody afterwards. I just like hightailed out of that place and jumped in my car and just like went home, because I just like,
you're like, I don't know what I just did.
I couldn't hit, like it was just it was such an overwhelming kind of experience.
I was exactly the same, but I was a bit more emotional. I just cried. And then I drove home with some of my other mates who were they were the good ones by then. And they were just like, man, it's awesome you made a decision. But again, they had no context of why it broke me. Why it broke me so much, man. And I think, and what I love about that thought, Dan, is that it happened earlier on in the week for the both of us. Like that first breaking point happening earlier, and then the rest of the week was, like we were like a punching bag. Well, I felt like a punching bag. It's like, oh, you got me on that one. Okay, I get it already. You know, it's like, it's only Wednesday, and I'm still getting beaten up for the decisions I've been made.
No, it's crazy. Well, I want to talk to you like a little bit about like your heritage. Growing up, so you got a Samoan background. Grew up for the majority of time in Logan, South Brisbane. And so what was it like growing up Samoan, like in a
it's interesting that you say that, Dan. Obviously both my parents are from Samoa. They migrated from Samoa to New Zealand for a better life. Really, they did, to work, and what they would do is send money back to Samoa for their siblings or for their mum and dad, or for their mum, sorry, because their dads, my granddad, I've never had a granddad. And so they would do that in the hope that they would eventually secure a house or have enough income to bring the parent, the grandmas over, or their mum over, and then obviously bring their siblings over, and then everyone could work, and then obviously provide for their own families as well as look after our grandma. So I grew up in a household where, you know, just work hard, do what you actually have to try and do to support your family, and church was always a part of it. Church was a massive foundation in our household. in our church as well. They're always super involved. So I sort of grew up with that understanding of community, if I could say, like, oh, okay, there was community and the cultural aspect where, man, mum and dad would have to work hard so they can provide not only for my sister and I, but also help support their siblings and also their mum.
Community in general.
Yeah. So that was a subculture or an extension to, okay, so now there's the church aspect when everyone else in our church, so we went to a Samoan church, was doing the same thing as well. Everyone was working to be able to provide for their family, provide for their kids, but then also support their parents. So I grew up, I've never known a grandfather. I've only ever known, like, we always have the matriarch in our homes. And so my grandma would often go around to different of her kids' houses. So she would stay with us for a few months, then go stay with another, one of my parents' siblings for a few months. Yeah. It was literally like the best setup for my grandmas. So part of my life, each of my grandmas, my mom's mom and my dad's mom, would have often looked after me when I was a kid. And so even to this day, when they were both alive, they would often say, "Oh, you were so precious. You cried all the time. You were a little kid." I'm like, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't cry."
What are you talking about? Leave me alone.
I still cry now.
But like, it seems like, it's that sort of, in some ways, it's that typical immigrant story, right?
Yeah.
Like, moving for a better life.
Yeah.
Want to be able to give the kids like a good life and good education, and to provide for them and provide for the family. But one of the things that sort of I want to talk about a little bit is sort of growing up Samoan. So you live in a Samoan family. I know Dad doesn't speak much English.
No.
What's Mum like?
Mum's okay. She speaks well. Dad didn't go past, I think, maybe year 4 or even less than that. Like, he doesn't have a high school education at all, but he's always managed to work well with what he like with his hands and stuff like that. And so, hello, you need to go grab Mum because I'm actually talking to Uncle Dad.
He's doing something.
Okay, well, you need to go get her quick. Okay, thank you.
I'm not editing that out.
But I'm gonna cut that one again. So Mum speaks pretty good English. Again, she didn't go, I think, past maybe year 9 or year 10 in high school in Samoa. And so it was really a challenging time for my sister and I growing up, because we didn't have the luxury of our parents being educated as such, all they could do was encourage us, and that was about it. Like, we couldn't show them our homework and talk about English reading or literacy. They would just be like, we don't know.
That's even like a crazy thing that, like, Jack and I sort of talk about a little bit, in like, neither of my parents were like tertiary educated or anything like that. And I'm halfway through my master's degree. Jack's almost finished her master's degree. And like, for her parents, like, when her dad eventually got his bachelor's in teaching, but before that it was just like the diploma kind of thing. And he was the first one there was no, and so it's this, there is like a real, I think, privilege, like, in some sense, of kids growing up with educated parents, like, just in knowing how the system works.
Well, that's it. Like,
no idea how the system worked, or
that's exactly right. And so
subjects or what.
I couldn't tell you how many times I felt embarrassed. Or I think, what I really picked up, Dan, in terms of my learning experience, was I picked up very quickly how I can learn off other people just by listening and just by observing. And so, I mean, school was a perfect place. Like, people would be learning in class, but I often learn and I would ask questions. And so for me, as I grew up, even in high school, I had the ability to ask questions in a way where it didn't sound like I was actually asking him to help me. And so, and I didn't want to ask in a way where it'd be embarrassing. It's like, oh, Ray doesn't actually know this, so he's asking. So I'd always find a way to be playful about it, or befriend people.
Because part of like for your generation, you guys are like the first generation of
Western,
Samoans in Australia, right? Like,
totally. First generation Western born and Western raised kids.
Yeah.
And so obviously our values didn't change in terms of what we would learn at home and church, but the way that we would express it and the way we would have to go about just surviving education, that was all on us.
Yeah.
So,
because there's sort of challenges there. Like, it's different for me, like coming from a British context, like my parents are English. But even still, like being, it wasn't until I was sort of older that I realized that, oh, that's like a super English thing. English thing. And like most Australians don't do that. But like for you, like Samoan being like even that a lot further removed from Australian culture.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like you're talking about with your conversion experience, it's almost like a between two worlds existence as well. And one of the things, like I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you've sort of come full circle in that experience. Because
here we go.
you grew up in Logan. You grew up, Samoan household, but in a Western context. Going to Samoan churches.
Yeah.
You have a conversion experience. You have a ministry calling. So you head to Avondale. You study ministry. You study teaching. You head to New Zealand, you come back, you have like this, about 10-year kind of time lapse of being away. You marry your wife.
You
got kids, and like you're not married to a Samoan, you're married to like an Anglo-Aussie.
Yeah. Even that, bro, was in a challenge in itself. Not in the fact that I was never questioned or criticized. I guess I'll have a conversation with some of my closest mates, and I said, "Oh, why did you end up marrying like a white girl?" Like if I could be blunt, an Australian or even a Kiwi or whatever. I just said it was never really for me. I said it was never really about what race that person was, because by then in my Christian journey, and just me growing as a person, it's like, if I want to be able to marry someone who has same values in terms of family and faith, that's definitely a given, But number three was someone who was just as driven as I was to be able to be the best that they could potentially be. So, and not just be happy or be content. Like contentment is such a, man, within our culture, like the Samoan culture, and as a subculture, it's like we're just so content. No, it is what it is. Why? And so the person that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, and will be to be the mother of my children, and for me to journey my life experience, or someone that's just like, it's like, hey, I want to be able to not push the boundaries in terms of, hey, what kind of a person will I be at the end of this particular challenge or situation? Like, never settle for less. Not that I wanted to be better than anyone else, but I wanted to just keep pushing forward. And so for me, it was never about race or anything like that. And so once my friends understood that, they're like, oh yeah, we kind of get it. I was like, whether or not you're Samoan or not, that's irrelevant to me. That's just my opinion, I'm always going to be Samoan, and it's my responsibility to share that with my wife and now my kids. Yeah.
I imagine though, like it would bring different sort of challenges into like your relationship though. Like if we just sort of take the branch off for a sec.
Oh man, like, I got some funny stories to share with you, man.
Coming from, because like, in the Bible, like it talks about marriage and it's the two becoming one.
Yeah.
And for me, like I always like to kind of think of it. It's like those those old sort of like IKEA toys that are like and you got to take the shape and like fit it into the same. And when for all marriages, like, sometimes you're trying to, you got personalities, you got life experiences, you got, family traditions and different things that you're all trying to mash into this one kind of unit sort of thing together. And so when you add in like cultural backgrounds and stuff into there, like it just brings like a whole nother shape. you got to try and fix into this.
Yeah, it's a melting pot of all what you said. I remember one of the first arguments Shani and I got in after, when we got married. I think it was about a year into our first year of marriage. Yeah. And I remember coming home we both remember coming home one afternoon. I just finished preaching a sermon, and it was we had lunch, we had a bit of a chat. Then I started to wash the dishes, which was it wasn't abnormal. Like, I'd wash the dishes often, but sure. Shani was just there talking, we're chatting. So as I'm washing the dishes, she's like, "Oh, you don't wash it like that." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm just washing the dishes. Like, you've seen me, I've washed it before when you're around. Like, what does it matter now? Yeah. And then it just escalated from there. It went from 0 to like 100 in like 2 seconds. And the argument was about, you don't wash dishes like that. Yeah. And for me, when the moment she said that, and even now, like if she was in the room, she'll say the same thing. It was a silly argument, but the core of the pain or the hurt was, my mom has taught me to wash dishes. Yeah. And if you know my mom's journey, like she was a dishwasher. She was a dishwasher in New Zealand. She worked for this kitchen. I think it was for the one of the New Zealand Herald newspaper based in Auckland. And she was a kitchen hand, and she would wash dishes. So she would come home and she would teach my sister and I I remember maybe I was about 6 or 7. Yeah. So I'd learn how to wash dishes from that age, going, "Oh, my mom, this is what she does for a living." Yeah.
So you've got like this emotional attachment.
And the sentiment about, don't you ever tell me how to wash dishes. Like, and then
it's a really silly thing, right? Like,
yeah, it was. And at the time, like, we didn't know it, and it blew up. And I accused her of being a spoiled little brat. Like, you grew up with a dishwasher. We don't even have, these are dishwashers. And it just exploded from there.
Me and my sister.
Yeah, we are the dishwashers. What are you on about? You guys, again, it was just such a real cruel, obviously when you're so hot tempered, you start pointing out things that, and I was like, why am I so angry at this? But again, like you were saying, it's this culture thing of like fitting things into a relationship. And I didn't know that was a part of that really stirred me, and it really upset me, because attached to that was this emotional, like, my mom came from Samoa, minimal English. She goes to a job where she has really no qualification. The only reason why she got into it because one of her sisters was working there. So now she washes dishes for a living. And all she's ever known is hard work. And she taught me how to do it the right way, because that's what she did for a job. That was like stored in the back of my memory bank.
I remember just like when we spent some time together just recently, you told me this story, and it's one that I sort of want to bring back. We're sort of taking a couple of steps back and looking at like heritage and growing up.
Yeah.
And like there's definite challenges within that, in living in the two worlds sort of thing. But I think like there's also like benefits to it. And there's this one story you told me about your dad. You know, the one that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
With the apprentices and stuff. And I'd just like you to share that story, because for me, it was just like a really cool story about, like you talked about how your dad can't speak English, doesn't really have an education.
Yeah.
But, just even though you sort of like, from like a worldly perspective, we look at him and go, oh, who's this guy? Like,
who is this guy? Doesn't really meet the proper standards in terms of qualifications, or
he can't speak English. He has no education.
Yeah.
But yet, like, something happened with him. So just share like a little bit about his story.
Yeah, so it's funny because he's been retired now for a few years, but by the end of his working career, he is a master weldsman. Like, he's got an official paperwork to say he's an official master weldsman. And so for anyone who works in that particular trade, man, you have to clock up massive hours, and you have to be given massive responsibility and understand how to weld certain things. And, like, he's just, it was super cool to see that by the end of his working career. Reverse back to what you were saying. It's like, even though he didn't have a formal education, he was good with his hands. Same thing. He was good with listening and watching. Yeah. And so often when he'd be in these jobs where he'd have to weld things. And I remember one time where he had to change jobs, and he'd have to get my sister, who was still in high school, to write him a CV, right? So my sister's just not making things up, but like okay, well, Dad, what was this job? What did you do? And my dad would do his best to sort of say to my sister, I had this experience. So my sister would have to, you know, reword everything, send my dad with a CV to this new place of work. So Dad comes home, and I remember this one time he took his CV to this place. He came back home and he said, he just told us, but, you know, very, you know, humbly. And he goes, oh, yep, I got the job. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Later on, he would tell us that he'd go into this interview and slide a CV across the table. The people interviewing would look at the CV and go, oh, it's quite impressive. And so they'll try and test them on theory, right? This is not what my dad wanted to do. Yeah. Like, the last thing I want is to sit in a theoretical test. Oh, man, you can feel the anxiety coming, like the anxiety level just rising straight away. So they said, oh, you know what? I should switch it up. So Dad, rather than Dad sitting the theory, he'd said to them, oh, can I show you? And they were surprised because no one has ever asked them, can I show you what I can do? Yeah. So they said, sure. So they went, I think, to the back, I guess, like near the workshop where they were working. And they said, oh, what about this? And like within 2 minutes, Dad did like a welding thing. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever.
They literally hired him on the spot, and they just gave him, I think, one of the top, the top pay, like the top rate, the top hourly rate. And right then and there, when I knew that Dad was just like, he was a legend. Like, it was like this mythical person that just went in. I just showed them 2 minutes of my work, didn't have to say anything. And they're like, yeah, you're a very well experienced weldsman. And he got hired on the spot. What I learned from that was, like, later on, and I'd ask that, oh, what was it like to, you know, are you enjoying work? Is, oh yeah, they're sending me apprentices now. I'm like, they're sending you apprentices? Like, don't apprentices have to come with like worksheets and workbooks and make sure that you're signing things off and that you're doing theory? And he's like, oh yeah. I said, but so how did you get by, like, with signing their stuff off? I was like, oh, they would write it, but I would show them. I was like, that's an unusual approach. So what he would do, they'll explain it to Dad, and then they'll point to a picture in their workbook of what the weld used to look like and how it should be. And Dad's like, so he'll come alongside these apprentices and he'll show them. Like, he wouldn't say much, or like he'll point, show them the diagram of like weld, and they'll be like, oh, right. So Dad's whole sort of like mentoring and showing his apprentices was literally by showing them what to do. And he just became this legend within his workplace that all the apprentices wanted to go to Dad, because he didn't beat them up about if they didn't know anything, or, you know, people get frustrated with, oh, apprentices don't know anything. And like he was one of the very few people in that workplace that he wouldn't treat them like an apprentice. Like, he would treat them like a colleague. And so he wouldn't yell at them. He wouldn't get them to do, you know, the jobs that apprentices, go sweep that, go pick up that tool, go grab me this so I can do this. He would literally show them, and he would work with them. Yeah. And that's how Dad's reputation spread amongst like his workers. And then, by the end of his time of retirement, like, they loved him, man. So for me, man, when I pick up on like a lot of those things, man, I just really have so much respect for my dad, and just his way just to navigate through difficult situations.
Oh, man. Like, I remember you telling me that story and just being like in awe of him, really. I'm just thinking for you as well, is just, man, what a great example of a father.
Yeah.
That he had like so many challenges against, but he had that drive to work. But not just to do work, but to do good work.
Yeah.
And to, you know, take pride in it, in what he did, and to, you know, like, it's just, man, like, like, it's an emotional kind of thing for me, because I don't have like that sort of experience with my dad.
But for me as well, like, he modeled what resilience and what problem solving was really about.
Yeah.
Because that really rubbed off. Like, it's only until now I'm realizing, man, a lot of the way I like my resilience and my character is because of him. Because whenever he was stuck with a situation, I rarely ever saw my dad throw his hands up in the air and go, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, he always found another way. And always ask questions, and he'll observe, and so for me, I've always had that grit, that resilience of like, oh, okay,
it's sort of like a spirit of humility kind of thing.
Yeah. And be okay with it. It's like, if I've ever faced with a really tough situation, in my working career, and even now my ministry, I'll just step back and I wouldn't say, oh, I think of my dad. I'm like, okay, that's all right. Well, how do we go forward? How do we move forward? Okay, it's not the end of the world. It's fine. Let's readjust. Let's pivot. Let's find another way. Like, I would never get caught up in the emotion of disappointment or failure. It's only momentary. I'm like, oh man, that decision I made didn't work out the way it is. Or, you know, my advice or my counsel to, you know, particular people in leadership, that didn't work out. I don't have the capacity, or I haven't never been modeled, mull in, you know, linger in
wallow
in your sadness and disappointments. Like, I've never seen that.
It just packs up and moves on. But I guess we'll just go back to a little bit to like how I was sort of saying it's sort of come full circle, because now, you know, like, I'm sure a lot of people that are going to see this know who you are anyway, because you are Mr. Social Media in all your different things, like whether it's the Cisco brand or your Zoo Fitness or just your general church stuff. But now, the last, I guess, getting not quite 12 months, but you and the family moved back to Brisbane, moved back to Logan, and back to pastoring Samoan churches.
Man, what a crazy journey.
After, you know, it sort of feels like you've had your time in the wilderness.
I've done my little Moses dance.
And God's like called you back into this.
Right, come back, son.
Full circle sort of thing. And Logan's probably, I'm sure it's changed heaps in that time, but you were saying that's like how it's just even got exploded even more in a diverse kind of way. And so like, how are you navigating like the challenges of being in such a diverse environment, and that kind of thing?
So for me, coming back into a Samoan church, it's my first ever Samoan churches, so when I left to go study to become a church minister and a teacher, the thing on my mind is like, I am never going back to a Samoan church. Like, for me, because of that experience that I talked about earlier, of just like, it wasn't a healthy place for me. I felt like I wasn't able to ask the questions that I wanted to, just about my spiritual Christian journey. I felt like my voice was suppressed because there's a bit of a hierarchy within our culture. A lot about respect, but I won't talk too much into that. But that really impacted me in a really, I wouldn't say negative, but it made me think, okay, the next time, if ever I come back, it's not going to be like this, because I know what it made me feel like, and I know how it has impacted the rest of my generation, who are, handful of them are no longer Christians, I would even say, or even churchgoers. So now that I've come back and I've realized, if anything, I realized from my father and my mother as well, and my grandmothers, was that they instilled in me to serve your people. Like, know and understand that you're one of the, and I say this in this way, they wouldn't say that specifically to me. It's like, Ray, you must come back and serve your people. You are privileged. So you have an education, you have had these experiences, come back and serve. But I always could sense it within my parents that they would want me to come back and give back. And so I realized when I came back to Brisbane and came back to pastoral ministry, I was like, man, I really do believe, and I have a heart to give back now. Understanding my opportunities. I'm very, very privileged and blessed to be able to be, to be educated the way that I have. Very blessed and privileged to have the travel experiences that I've had that's really formed my worldview, and also privileged and blessed to be experienced to leadership roles or roles within church and even in outside of church that not many people would experience and have. And so for me to come back with this wealth of experience and knowledge, it's like, it'd be selfish of me to come back and go, I'll just keep it for myself so I can get, I can gain from it. And, but now it's like seeing what my mom and dad did and my grandmothers, they'd always say, give it back. Like, what's mine? And this is the cultural stuff that's been really important. It's like, what's mine is yours. Like, what's mine is yours. Share, like, take it. What's mine is yours. Like, if I win, you win.
And there's that real, like, like Australian society is very individualistic, and so that to me, that's one of the big differences between Samoan culture and sort of I guess, white Western Australian culture, whatever that is, and is that it is about the group and the community, and it's that real community centered and community ownership, and it's not just ownership of like resources and stuff, but it's sort of like it is that ownership of people.
Yeah.
You know, like it's you're part of our group, and we want to, you have a responsibility to that group.
Yeah.
Because we've all put it in to get you to here.
Yeah. It's like they've made an investment, really. They've literally made an investment in me as a young kid, unbeknownst to me what that investment even looked like. But I always felt it, you know. I was always supported. Hey, Ray, do this. And I thought to myself, oh man, they're just killing me, man. They're burning me out, like, with all this responsibility. I appreciate it. And I know I'm gifted at speaking and singing and doing all this other things, but I'm getting burnt out. And, you know, I didn't really feel like I had a quite of an influence. But now coming back into the space, and I guess what you were saying before, as diverse as Logan is, that's just one aspect of the diversity, coming back to this culture and giving back and have this heart of service. But now figuring out, okay, what's out there, what currently exists in terms of helping other people, and where do I fit? Where's the lane that I run in, that I'm not running against everyone, but going, hey, how do I run alongside a lot of these community groups? And being one of the old school people of like this area, you know, 12 years is a long time away to come back. And when I'm connecting with people, you know, people say, oh yeah, I've been around in Logan for a few years now, and you know, 6 years. I'm like,
I'm OG Logan.
Yeah, I'm OG. So when I say I'm from way back, they're like, oh wow, so you would know so and so, and list off. It's like, I either went to school with them, because I also did a stint at a state school, or I played touch football in the local area. We went to the same places. Their friends were my friends, and so there's this network of like the old school people from Logan. And then obviously those who have just migrated into the area. And so once they get a glimpse or catch that I'm from that particular generation, it's almost like I have automatic runs on the board. It's like, well, he gets us.
I don't know if it's true, but it feels to me like, I don't know the history of Logan too much, but it feels like the Samoan community were probably, or the Pacific community anyways, if we included all of them in there, were probably some of the first to move into that area. Yeah,
it's so true. Yeah, because I remember when we first moved into this area, at the time, there was a lot of a strong Indigenous, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander community. That's just what Woodridge and Logan was known for. And so we blended it. But over the years, at that particular time, there's a strong migration of Pacific Islanders into the area, more so Samoans as well. And then over the years, we had immigrants from Africa, Afghanistan. So now it's really this melting pot. It's this melting pot. And so to come back to that's been a bit of a learning curve. And figuring out what are the services that currently exist. Who am I in this community? Who's around that used to be around? What are people doing? So that's been, it's really eye-opening, because for me, I take pride in establishing myself within my community, like not in a sense that I want to be known, but I just want people to know, hey, I'm here to help and here to serve. And so this is where I'm really good at, and this is my strengths. How can I align myself with what everyone else is doing to make them better?
I've got a few questions for you, and like one's just sort of come to mind now is, what advice would you give someone who's growing up? They could be a young person in their teens or in their 20s or something, maybe even like our age in the mid 30s, which is a bit crazy. What advice would you give them that have had that same sort of growing up experiences, where they're sort of in church, but it's between cultures kind of thing, where they might be first generation, like whatever ethnicity it is? Because it seems to me like some of the feedback and things that I've heard is that, for these first generation kids is, for yourself, you'd say, well, you don't feel like you're fully Samoan, like in the sense of that, like that full Samoan culture kind of thing. But you don't feel like you fit in the fully Australian Western kind of culture either, and you're sort of like in this somewhere ground.
Yeah. No man's land.
How do you, what's some advice you could give to some kids that are growing up in that experience, or even young people that are in that experience, to help them navigate that territory?
Yeah, there's a few things, Dan, that comes to mind, and it's a great question, because it's a question that that this generation, anyone younger than me, are constantly dealing with. It's not just a question, oh, this is a simple answer. It's like I said, it's a cycle, it's an ongoing thing. Yeah. So number one, I would say, ask your questions. It's okay to have the questions that you do have. Because I remember asking questions and going, and just being suppressed. Is like, nah, you don't need to know that, because you're not of age yet to know some of that stuff, or to even question that thought. So whether that be around your cultural practices, whether that be around schooling, whether that be around just asking other authorities, like, it's okay to have questions. And so being open to questions, like, keep asking questions. Number two would probably be like listening. Listening is a big thing. Listen to your parents' generation, listen to your grandparents, listen to your uncles and aunties. And all you have to do is listen. I think we can achieve a lot of things moving forward in our society if we just listen. When what we're listening to is listening to the heart of our people. Yeah. Right. And going, what's really important to them? Because often it would sound like, oh, they're just telling me off, or I'm getting a growling, or I'm getting hit over the knuckles for everything I do. I'm always been pulled up on. No, or whatever. Yeah, there's a lot more depth to the reason why they're passionate about it. They just don't know how to express it, because they've just never had to express it. They don't know the words or the feelings that attach to it. So for me, I love listening to what other people have to say, and really trying to get to the heart of it, is what they really care about. I think recently you and I were at at a conference, and they said, people don't resist change, they resist loss. So they don't mind changing, but when they know that, I'm going to suffer loss of cultural identity, loss of language, part of your culture. So whenever they feel like they're losing something, they get on the defense.
That's a fear. Fear of losing part of something they hold.
Yeah. Fear. That's it. The fear of losing part of something that really is special to them. And so when I say to that, it's like, well, then listen more. Listen to what they really care for and what's really on their heart. And from there, you're able to, I guess, navigate through that, what they would like and what you would like as well. And number three, I think more than anything, take ownership. Yeah. Like, in a way, don't ask for permission. You just need to take ownership of that space, because inevitably they're in a space where their parents have never been before as well. Like, especially now with the COVID-19 isolation and lockdowns, like no one's ever been through this before. We're all experiencing this together. But in terms of a younger person, it's like, take ownership of that space that you live in the digital space, or even now in creating your own community. They no longer care about the things that, I shouldn't say they don't care, but it's not a priority on their list to have a house, to own a mortgage. For us, it's like, we'll get there, and that's what we want. But for them, it's about community. It's about taking ownership of whatever it is that they want to do their best in, and not being afraid to go, I have the backing of my family and of my parents. And that happens when you listen to their concerns and their genuine heart for your success. And so I'm having those conversations even now. Like, I remember when I decided to also do high school teaching and my parents' initial thought was, oh, but why? I thought being a church pastor within our church culture is the pinnacle. Like, you've made it. Like, the next thing after you is God. Like, like,
being a doctor in other cultures or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. But so to really help mum and dad coach through that and go, actually, I do have a calling, but my calling is with people. It's not in a job. So that's why I often say to people, it's like, if I wasn't a pastor today, that's okay, because my calling is still to help people. And that's why I became a high school teacher. And that's why I became a fitness trainer. And that's why I became this, by default, the social media person that I am. But it's not who I am, it's just a byproduct. People say, oh, you're so inspirational, Ray. And it's good. And like, for me, of a words of affirmation guy, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
but to understand the backlog of as to why it's like give back, serve, love people, listen to what people are saying, and make people, and make your family proud. And so because I had that, and I know I had my support of my parents, they couldn't be more proud of me, the way that I've raised my kids, the way that I've tried my best to, to keep my marriage intact. Not that it's bad, but but because and here's another thing as well. Like when we came back, we decided that we wanted my parents to live with us. So we've been living together for the last few months, and it's been amazing. Like, it's so cool. And for my parents, it's been interesting for them because they've never seen me parent before. They've never seen me be a husband before. So for them, they're learning to like, man,
Yeah. 2 more questions.
Yep. I'm trying to avoid the sunlight. You can see that that's the sun.
Yeah. Oh, it's all good. If you could jump in a time machine and go back and tell your 20-year-old self anything, what would you say?
Ooh,
what one piece of advice would you give 20-year-old Ray?
I know exactly where I was at 20 years old. This is freaky.
Where were you? Like, so
so I was playing volleyball for Queensland.
Yeah.
And again, I was doing that 50-50 in church, 50 out of church.
Yeah.
So I remember that very, very clearly. Yeah. I had a job, I was making money, I had a car, had independence, had an income, still living with mom and dad, of course. And I think the thing that I would tell my 20-year-old self was, I would say it's okay. Be patient with what you want to, where you want to go in life.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of it was just impatience. Like if I didn't see something happening according to what I want, it's like, don't bother, whatever. Like I'd wish that's
good. That's be patient. It is like, is that something that even now, like I struggle with, like, I'm not a patient person. Like it's like my ADD kind of thing or something. Yeah. Just like, I just want to be able to do it now. But be patient. And I think like with that, like it takes in that anything worthwhile doing is going to take time.
Yeah, totally.
It's going to take grind, and it's going to take, like it's not just going to happen. You're going to have to work for it.
Yeah.
And part of that is patience. And I just heard, I don't even know what I was listening to just today, but like they were saying some study, and the number one characteristic they found of like successful people was perseverance.
Yeah.
And like perseverance is really just like a combination of patience and grit. Right?
Yeah. So true.
It's this combination of not giving up and being able to keep your eyes set on what you want to get to.
I think for me, Dan, like when you say that, like I really believe, I'm just in that place at the moment, and I think to myself, like when people see me now, like, and they go, man, you make everything look so easy. It's like, you have no idea. Like you are not like the mistakes or the things of, like the trial and error things that I've tried to do. That's right. Oh man, you speak really well. It's like people see now I get these cool speaking appointments, and which is amazing. And I love it, but people don't see me doing 2-minute worships with here, and like the small little things that I just added, more tools to my tool belt, and they don't see that. And so for me,
when I get the times that you bombed, like you said,
bombed so bad, man, so people wouldn't know that I bombed so bad. Like some, I think either they do or they're very gracious. They're like, oh, that was really good, Ray.
Yeah.
But I think for me with that perseverance, like
ministry of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so I really, so when people do see this, like that's the culmination of everything that's happening. Like, oh, you're so transparent. It's like, it took me a long time to be honest with myself and to be transparent. It took me a long time to learn the skills of communication, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
But also it took me a long time to realize to be comfortable with the skin that I'm in, meaning be myself. Like I am who I am, and not being afraid to share that with people. And so obviously when people see me, I've had some people say, "Oh, you're that guy. You're that." I was like, I'm normal. like you were saying, like, coming up to Bundy and, a whole bunch of people reaching out, which is awesome. Like they've known me from afar. They only heard of me, but if they know my story, they're like,
they know online Ray.
Yeah. I'm the online Ray, but if they know me, they're like, oh, I'll do it anyway. Like, just because that's who I am. But it's because I've just learned to be patient with myself and learn along the way and adapt and persevere. And so when I get given opportunities, it's rare that I flint in sort of anxiety and, I don't know what it's like. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm happy to do it. So some mistake it as like a very laissez-faire attitude, but they don't know that it's like, I've been doing this for a while. That's why it's easy for me to say yes.
I get what you're saying. And like, I think it's interesting, like that sort of message that you give your 20-year-old self kind of applies in this context as well.
Totally. Totally.
And for me, that's almost like, in Adventist church culture kind of thing, we have this sort of unfortunate tradition of idealizing like the evangelist and the celebrity pastor and kind of thing, where really 99% of all ministry is just your day-to-day, like local church pastor grinding it out on a journey with the church. And like that's really like where the work is.
And with that, then, like for me, I've never said to myself, or even a goal, go, I want to be the next Adventist preacher. I want to be the next or just Christian evangelist.
Whatever.
I just said to myself, I just want to be the best person that God has called me to be. And it's that text, like, seek ye first the kingdom of God and everything will be added. Like, some I had a desire to go, I wanted to influence people. But how that looks like and how that makes people feel. And so what I do now influences people, and it's never my goal to go, I need to make content today that's going to influence people. It's like, be myself, own that space. And own that space. And as a default, it's going to influence people.
No, that's cool. Last question.
Let's do it.
If I gave you like this magical ability, and you could get everyone that heard this to do one thing every day, like you just snap your fingers and they do it, what would you get them to do?
I would get them to spend 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes of just being grateful.
2 minutes of gratitude.
Like at the start of your day, or at the end of your day. Like, if you can just, and I've learned that living with my parents, just life experiences as well. Like, when I'm grateful of the things you do have, what is it that you have? And I think if we could practice gratitude, that would just, I think really would enrich our lives and make us better human beings, period. Because you're not leaning into the thought of like, I need to get more things. No, I need to be grateful for more things. And so, you're not in a comparison world. You're not in, I wish my ministry was just like that person. I'm like, no, good. Like, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful that I have a laptop. I'm grateful that I have a microphone. Like, I have a roof over my head. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't desire to chase anything. Like, so I think if people could practice, that was my superpower. I can make everyone do the one thing, 2 minutes of gratitude, whether you write it down or just reflect for 2 minutes.
I mean, like, it seems so small, but like, I feel like it would be such a powerful community changing thing, because, gratitude is the key to joy. And gratitude isn't something like, there are some people that I think have a gift of gratitude, right? Like, they are just joyful people. Like, you come across them and they just resilient, joyful, happy, naturally grateful people. But that is a very small percentage, right? Like they are like, they're the freaks of nature kind of. They're what proves the rule.
Yeah.
But for most of us, gratitude is a muscle that we're born with. But we have to activate it, and we have to build it and work it. And, you know, it's only through that practice and that working it out that we actually grow it. We can find like that joy. So yeah, that's not at all what I was expecting you to say, but it was really good. But Ray, man, we need to catch up.
We do.
We'll chat again sometime.
Appreciate the time, man, on the podcast. I love it.
Yeah, man. I'm expecting you to promote it through your vast social networks.
Oh, don't worry, man. Don't worry. I will blast it like you would never believe.
Yeah. Thanks for being patient, Zero.
Yeah. Woohoo. Made it.
Thanks, man.
All right then. See you, bro.